All right, we're back. We're back for another week. Legends Live. Mike's a legend. I'm working on it.
You're a legend. No. See, you've been solo forever, and that's legendary because I'm doing it now, and it's freeing, but it's just so many moving parts. I mean, so for you to do it now, listen, you had a little help in the beginning from a guy named John Otterstad, right?
Well, he gave me, so that's interesting you bring that up. So John, I had a training facility at the time and ended up having 3 and I sold it. But, you remember the whole speed and quickness craze and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Parisi, and we were in the same area as them. And so John was in because we had I don't even know if you remember these guys, but I had Coach Steve Boharness who played at Rutgers and some other kids. So he was in there kind of just looking at some of the kids that were in their training, you know what I mean, as he used to do. And he said he went to a combine. I don't remember who did a combine. It was like a one-off combine or something. And he said, he's like, there may be a space for younger kid combines and kind of casually made the comment, you know what I mean? It was like a comment hey, if somebody kind of did something like this, there might be something there, right? So we were talking. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna look into this. So I looked into it. That's when I came out with the event with that Joe Hayden and Tyrod Taylor went to, and a bunch of other guys ended up being in there. And John covered it, came to that event, right? So he covered it. So those 2 big time players were there, along with John covering it. That was just one event that year. That's all it was in 2005. It was one event.
Yep.
And it went from we had 140 kids there, but people, which we were wait a minute, we didn't really promo it that much. And even between John, he might have put one thing up there, but it wasn't that crazy. But 40 people show up. We're like, wait a minute, there must be something here.
Yeah.
Hold on, 140 people with very little promo showed up. Yep. And people from everywhere were coming. And that's when we were like, wow. And the next year was when I had John. I actually flew John to all 5 of the events that weren't any event that wasn't there in New Jersey. And it went from there. So.
Well, if you remember that year too, you got some write-ups on Rivals.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
Because Mark Pashonik. So you and I spoke, and I said, listen, I'm not going to these events. I got, at that time we were 36 weekends out of the year, maybe more, going to different events and stuff like that. And yours were new. But I said, Mark's a guy who works for me. If he is there or scouts, or I'll add the kids to player profiles and we'll do articles. So we did those articles on it. And then I tried to get Rivals to partner with you. And of course that failed because everything fails. When you try to get things done at a corporate level, and then you went off on your own and did your billion things. Then you hired somebody I didn't like. And then you and I had a couple spats on Twitter, which was funny.
That is funny.
You were losing your mind. You were overworked. I blame overwork. And I blame Barry.
Was Barry with me at the time?
Yeah, he was. Barry was in your ear, man.
I loved Barry for certain things that I thought he was great. He was just mad a lot. That he obviously really had a good handle of players and stuff like that. And I thought he was really good, spot on most of his analysis but he was mad.
Yeah.
He was mad a lot. And that was my only thing, even though we did align on a lot of things. I got where he came from, and that whole deal. But he was mad. Everybody has their Achilles heel.
Yeah,
I would say that's his Achilles heel.
Well, he was upset that Rivals got rid of him. So, So he had an axe to grind with rivals, you know, and then I was rivals. So, you know, I get the brunt of most anybody who has an axe to grind with rivals. It wasn't the corporate people that got, you know, the venom. It was me, because people thought I ran rivals and edited rivals and, you know, took all the they thought I did everything. So so that was kind of funny. So you are legendary because of your path that you've taken solo, which is very hard to do because a lot of companies try to do it and they aren't successful and they don't have staying power and things like that. And that's why this promotion is kind of that we do is kind of important too. And you know, you and I have been talking to some old friends and 7-on-7 coaches who have been around for 15, 20 years. And those are the people we want to gravitate towards that can help with this promotion process and, you know, bring us kids that need promotion, but won't feed us, you know, a line. And that's what comes with experience. You get too tired of the BS and you just sort of cut through it all. And that's what I like about this, because it's not, you know, you said it last week, I think. It's not like us telling somebody we're going to email Georgia and Kirby Smart, and then they check back in a month and we say, oh, yeah, we got a response, but, you know, they're gonna keep an eye out. You know, or just lie to kids about that. We don't do that. It's the promotion goes up. If you want it one time, it's one-time fee. If you want it for 6 months or a year, that's a different fee. We put it up and we push it out, and then people see it, and then they make their own determinations on it. But we're not involved with the, oh yeah, James Franklin got back to me and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Because you could just, I mean, you can mail that in. I could, you know, I could pop up a business tomorrow, like similar to other people, charge $3,000, you know, throughout a recruiting cycle for a kid, maybe more, and tell them I'm going to contact all these schools from, you know, FCS to FBS to Power 5 to whatever, and just string them along and lie. That's a business, and that's what people are doing sometimes. So, you know, it's not what we're doing. It's just straightforward. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm sorry. It's a risk. Everything's a risk. You pay for stuff, you know, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But for the most part, you're going to be seen. So I'm excited about the affiliate programs, because we've got another one coming on soon that we can announce once he signs the paperwork on that. And we're going to be adding more and more affiliates. So if you are a long tenured high school or a 7-on-7 coach or a regional influencer in recruiting, and we've known you for a long time, you've had kids come through Dave's camps, or you've known me forever because you had kids come through, you know, the process with me covering it, reach out to me, because we have an opportunity for you.
Yeah, and it's a good one. And I want to point to the thing that you said that was really good, was because it's out there, right? We do these videos. The video goes out there. It reaches out to the college coach, and just like a quick social media 101 for athletes. There's notifications, and there's so many college coaches between me and Mike Farrell that are following us, that those notifications come through. So there's an opportunity, as opposed to the email where it's filtered upon filtered, right? Now, some do get through when people send emails out. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that there's so much more from a filtering process. If someone follows you, it's a much more intimate relationship in social media, that video then gets there. Those coaches have an opportunity to see that there's something they like, they follow it, they may reach out to you, which they've done in a ton of the cases here of the people that we've done video for. And I say, hey, we've done videos for some really good players, so that's obviously the nice part for it. So those players, it's not like, you know, they're slouches. They're very good players, and they're guys that are going to have opportunities. So the good thing is that, and you know, the truth is, the worst comes to worst. You know, if you're not a scholarship level guy, when you go through that whole process and you start to, maybe even if you're dipping below, you know, levels below, you'll already have that you could use within your process to connect with coaches and say, hey, you know, for whatever reason, I fell through the cracks. Obviously, there's so many less scholarships for high school players because of the portal and stuff. I fell through the cracks for whatever reason. But, I may be a higher level guy. And, if I have to start here, you're going to get those coaches to follow you and interact you and probably bring you on in some capacity. So that value really, trickles all the way down, which is what I really like about it. And it's a ton of fun to do the videos of the guys, to actually look at, what they're doing and do the research on them and the nuances on these players. So it's really great. Check it out. And it's myfootballcamps.com/D1, or you can go to NUCsports.com/D1. And soon enough, Youth One they'll have a page on there for us as well. That should be coming shortly. But you don't have to look any further than going to mine and Mike's social media platforms, and you'll see the videos for yourself. So there's no such thing as like, oh, what actually is it? Just peruse our feed. You can peruse the feed and see them.
Yeah, my top two, other than my pin tweet of the wide receivers, which we're going to get to, my top two right now on my feed are the two quarterbacks, the two Carsons. And the thing about it is too, it's like we don't just put it up, send it out once. I retweet it all the time. These two quarterbacks who I both feel for sure have FBS level talent, signed up for the 6-month package. So this is their second promotion. But in this second promotion, that particular promotion is going to get retweeted by me, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. So, that's essentially 5 or 6 promotions. Now it's a retweet. It's not like a new one. We're doing a new one for each of those guys next month. But for this, I just keep pushing it out there, and you never know where it's going to catch. And it's very interesting to me because I see, Rauner is interesting. Kruger, because he backed up, Cade Klubnik at Westlake for a couple of years. He's not Kyle Trask, where Kyle Trask was a backup into his senior year, but Kruger switched schools to St. Michael's last year and put up good numbers. And he's just got there late because the first 2 years he wasn't playing. And if you're not playing, it's hard to get noticed. And if you get noticed in your junior year as a quarterback, you've got to work hard. You need help. And you need somebody to sort of come through for you. And then Rauner's a 2024 kid. And I think he has, a lot of potential to get offers, even though 2024 is late. But, this is no offense to Zane Flores, right? Zane Flores is from Gretna, Nebraska. He's an Oklahoma State commitment. He was at the Elite 11 last week, right? And I watched all the film of every throw at the Elite 11. And he struggled at times, and he was, a little bit raw, and his level of competition is not a great thing in Nebraska and all that stuff. And, this is a kid who chose Oklahoma State over some nice offers, Missouri, Washington, Kansas State. He got on the radar early. That's why. Carson Rauner is as good as this kid. He just is. Not better, not worse, but on the same level. So when I see a Carson Rauner who's at the top, currently at the top of my profile, it changes constantly. So by the time you see this, it won't be. This kid's just as good. He doesn't have the attention yet, and Flores did, and that's the difference. That's it.
That's definitely the difference, and it'll catch up for him, I think, pretty quickly. Especially once we roll into the season. Kruger's team finished second, I think, in the Texas 7-7. So they were 14-2. I mean, you could see what's coming. And I'd say, the thing that's going to help Kruger too this year, very, very quickly, he's got a coach that's a legendary guy in Jeff Dykes, who's been around a long time. He was way back in the day, the head coach at Lake Travis. He's known as a quarterback guru, so he I'm sure he's already accelerating that path for him. So you have I think he coached Garrett He went to Texas.
Garrett Gilbert.
Yeah.
And he's been involved with the Nike camps forever. It's been around for a long time, so that's a good coach to work with, and he knows a ton of people too.
Yep.
So what Carson Kruger's doing is he's playing it smart, and his family's playing it smart. We've got Dykes. He's been around. He knows a lot of people, but that's not enough. Let's get Farrell and Schuman. And I'm sure he's probably talked to other people.
Yep.
We're not the beginning and end all of everything, but he's playing it smart. And, listen, he's got a lot of catch up to do because he's a 2023. He camped well. Texas, was talking to him about a preferred walk on. He's got Ivy grades. The offers are going to be slow to come because everybody's got their quarterbacks for 2023 for the most part. But he's positioning himself as well, in my opinion, for the portal. And by that, I mean, if he goes to an FCS level program, he's on the radar. Now if he didn't do this, he wouldn't be on the radar at all. He'd be a guy that just, signs with the Incarnate Word or somebody like that, and nobody's ever heard of him. And there's no, splash of who he is. Carson Kruger, even if he ends up at the FCS level, is a name that people are going to be like, where did I hear that from? And it's from our program. And then, they're going to keep a little eye on him. And I know schools have taken him and put him in a file. And this file is down the line, keep an eye on. And that's okay. If you're down the line, keep an eye on file, because a lot of things happen. Quarterbacks get injured their senior year, quarterbacks decommit, and a lot of the recruiting at the FCS level, and even at the group of five level is done during the season. It's the Alabamas and Texases of the world that load up with 20 commitments by June, but it's not the group of five programs. They wait and see because they know there's no point recruiting, and we'll segue into the Elite 11, a Dante Moore or a Malachi Nelson. There's no point. If I'm Ball State, I'm not recruiting that kid. It's just I'm not getting him. But I'm going to wait and see where the chips fall and the quarterback dominoes are done, and then I'm going to see what's out there. So it's about patience as well. But, like I said, I mean, it's very interesting for me. The influence we have always surprises me because I just don't think of it, because I've had so many conversations with coaches over the years, and I've heard so many coaches in the press. They'll say one thing in the press, that we don't give a crap about rankings. These guys doing the rankings are, keyboard cowboys. They suck. They're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about, right? And then 2 days later, I'll get a phone call from that coach saying, hey, have you looked at my my new wide receiver commitment? And I'm like, I just read an article where you said, all of us kind of suck. So which is it? Do you want me to look at your kid, or do I suck? And so you don't know what to believe. But I will tell you this: they all pay attention, every one of them. Yeah. And that's the funny part. And they all get angry. I write something that's not positive. I get a DM or a text saying, "Oh, what'd you do? Why'd you say that? That's ridiculous." And then a positive one, and all of a sudden they're my best friend again, and I'm getting the thumbs up. Let's go. And I'm like, this is sales. So you're selling.
That's right.
You're selling yourself, and they're selling to kids, and they're selling their program. Everybody's selling, and that's what we're doing now. We're selling you to programs.
You're 100% right. I can see, by the way, with Kruger, Casey Wheeler Dealer coming in and at Sam Houston State, and it's snatching him up if he fell through the cracks, because that is right in his wheelhouse of guys he grabs. Way back in the day when he was at Rowan, remember when he was at Rowan?
Yeah,
he was bringing in guys like famous QB coach now Tony Rasiopi, right? He brought him all those guys that were at FCS or FBS programs, and then something shook out, and they ended up with Casey down at Rowan. Same thing when he was at Delaware. Same thing now where he's at Sam Houston State. He's amazing at that.
And it's it's interesting too, because, we talked to a coach last week who was going to probably sign one of our affiliate groups. I hadn't talked to him in probably 7 years. He had 2 kids come through the process. One was a lesser recruited kid way, way back when. And then obviously he had a kid who was a big time recruit. And I talked to him through both of those. But I hadn't talked to him in, I don't know, 7 years. And I jumped in one of his spaces on Twitter. He saw me because it's got the blue check mark, and he started talking about me, in a positive way. And he's like, "Oh my God, this guy's legit, blah, blah, blah." And then I reached out to him. I said, "Hey, we're doing something. Are you interested?" And it's almost like no time passed. It was the same conversations, because these guys are all super energetic and hyped up, right? They just are. That's the ones I like. They have their regular business and then football, 3 day, 365. But it's interesting to see guys you haven't talked to in 6-7 years that are immediately willing to talk to you because they know who you are and you did things for them long ago. And I've had that on LinkedIn too. Like, I'm not really looking for a job. I'm not looking to work for a corporation, but I am looking to partner with people. I'm looking to collaborate. I'm looking to freelance and stuff. And I've had a ton of people who are influential in certain markets of life who had a kid come through the process, and they said, "You were really good about it." And I don't remember being good about it, but I guess I was. And that's cool too. So, there's very few out there that hate us. There's some.
I'm sure there's some.
Yeah, there's some. I know the ones that do. And I'm not going to deal with them, because why would I deal with someone who doesn't like me? Yeah. And then there's some that hated it. You remember Garvin?
Oh, I know him well. Yeah, Mr. Garvin. Yeah. He was
with Michael Ray, who was 5'9", right? He was so angry at me because I didn't have him as a 5-star, right? Michael Ray was faster than heck, and went to Florida State and didn't pan out, and that happens. That's life. As a football player, he was so angry at me, and he used to accuse me of the worst things. And then I forget it was maybe 10, 15 years later, he comes up to me, and he's there's no mistaking who he is.
Yep.
He looks away. That's just like, he's just
very personable too. Very personable.
But wasn't to me, hated me. But
always personal to me. I got along great with him.
It's not like some guy coming up shaking my hand that I hadn't seen in 15 years. And I'm like, I don't remember who he is. Like, it's Johnny Ray. Is that his name?
Johnny Ray.
Very, very, very distinct look about him, right? No mistaking who he is.
He's a big fan of the Raiders, as I remember. Always had a Raiders hat on.
Yeah. So he comes up to me 15 years later and he apologizes to me. He goes, I was a real jerk about my kid and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and honestly, there were threats of height discrimination. It was crazy. And I'm like, oh, I really appreciate it. I would never work with the guy though. Like, I appreciate the apology 15 years later, but I'm not going to work with people who are just, that takes that long for them to come around and realize that I have nothing personal against any of these kids I'm ranking.
Right.
Nothing. Couldn't care less where they go. Couldn't care less about anything,
It's interesting because I always had a great relationship with Johnny Ray because he was we were both coaches, right?
We had a coach relationship. He thought I was some keyboard cowboy who didn't know what it was
right.
About. And he was also. I remember the Elite College Combine. You remember that thing I did with?
Yes, yeah. That was the original. That was kind of one of the originals with Chris Melvin. Great guy.
That was the original All-Star camp. Like, that was pre-opening.
Yep, that was pre-everything.
Challenge. That was huge. And we had Eugene Monroe, Brian Cushing, Derek Williams.
I think Davis was the big guy back then too. From that,
from Piscataway.
Yeah, he was like Rutgers' first 5-star, I think.
Yeah, right? Offensive lineman. We had everybody. We had everybody on the East Coast come. From down as far as Virginia, even North Carolina, over from Ohio. And it was a big, big deal. And that back then, head coaches could come. So Urban Meyer was there, Charlie White was there. I mean, trying to think who else. I mean, every head coach except for Joe Paterno, was there. Because Joe Paul wasn't traveling at the time. And Michael Ray wanted to race Derek Williams because Derek was the number one player in the country at the time. And we're talking like 2005. And we set up the race, and it was so close. And I sort of gave the fastest title to Derek Williams, and his dad was pissed forever. And just little stuff like that happens. It was great to get the apology, but I was like, 15 years of grief is not passed by. So we'll work with people, but listen, there's guys that hate me, and still, I still don't believe the apology. I still think he hates me, and he liked you because you were coaches, right?
I was the coach, so we always got along.
Yeah, and he also sent a ton of kids to your camps and stuff like that.
He
so
did.
You guys had a different, but he also wanted all of his kids ranked high. And I can't do that. I can't just, hey, listen, I'm going to rank every one of your kids high, because that's not.
You know what's interesting? He was always so obviously Michael Ray was really the star, right? The ones after him were very good, but they weren't at the level of Michael Ray. He was always very, very appreciative with the other ones, because they were very. I mean, especially for high school, they were very good. But Michael Ray, speed-wise, was just in a whole different caliber. I mean, he probably ran one of the fastest 100 meters of all time in New Jersey. So, so he was so fast. And that was during the Bosco boom, I call it, when Bosco they really were the kings. That was Toll's son was on that team. I mean, it was a who's who of kids. They went all over the place,
Yeah. And so Michael Ray now runs.
He's a trainer, I believe.
He is. Yeah.
Yep. I've talked to him. He's actually a really good guy.
Well, I would work with, because he wasn't.
He's a really good guy.
It was never him. It was always his dad. Now, he's in Texas now?
Texas. He's in Texas.
I'm going to hit the little connect button here on LinkedIn. But, it was never him. It was always, and that's how it always is. It's always the dad, and they get a little overzealous. And some of them, like Johnny Ray, realized they were overzealous, and then other of them hold. I remember Phil Simms. Gosh, he really hated me.
Matty played with him, right? I'm pretty sure Matt played with Michael Ray and Toll Jr. Not Toll. It's Brian Toll. It wasn't Toll Jr. It was Brian Toll. And I want to say they were all in the same thing. Now, I don't know if they had so many QBs at that time too, though, that were coming through. I'm trying to think of where Matt Sims' time frame was. I think he was during that time frame. Or maybe they were slightly after.
I think so. Toll was like 2004, and I think Michael Ray was 2005, and then Matt was like 2007.
Okay. So
because Matt was a young kid on the Toll team, like a freshman,
right?
He was a Don Bosco kid, and yeah, it was interesting to me, because you had Chris, who was the number one recruit in the country, 5-star kid, goes to Texas, huge deal, and you got Matt, who was a 3-star kid. I had Matt as a 3-star, and his dad did not like that at all. And his mechanics were bad, and his dad confronted me in a parking lot at the Army Bowl about it all, and he didn't pan out, and I just didn't see. He was a U.S. Army All-American quarterback because, of course, he was at Bosco, and there were ties to Bosco from that organization, and he was the last name Sims, and his dad's on TV and all that stuff, but I just didn't see it panning out. But he never. Now, the funny part about it is Brian Toll's still a friend of mine through all this process, right? And he married Phil's daughter. So Brian Toll is part of the Sims family, and he's a buddy of mine, but I still think Phil don't like me to this day. And
he actually has. Here's what's interesting. Phil has a Phil with Matt. And I want to jump in the other things because I have a hard stop today. But Phil with Matt, they run like a QB school that's become wildly popular up in North Jersey. So it's and they have a lot of the really good QBs up there in Bergen County that actually work with them. it's funny because I was the head coach for 2 years at Indian Hills, which is across town from Ramapo. They're like sister schools. So, I would see these guys all the time. Now, I don't really know Phil, like I knew Matt loosely, and talked to him a few times, even met with him a few times about stuff. But he was a really nice guy. But it's interesting because you see them as adults, you know them as kids, coming up. It's interesting, but I don't really know Phil that well at all.
Yeah, and Chris is a big star at Fox now.
Oh, he is a star, yeah.
Big personality. So, again, but anyways, we were supposed to talk about other stuff.
Well, let's jump into your Elite 11. We could zip through the other stuff. I mean, even though that's probably its own show itself, but
conference. Let's talk about it. Conference realignment is going to be around for the next year, so we could talk about that every week.
Yes.
So
yeah,
we
save that.
Yes, there was the talk of Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah possibly joining the Big 12. I've heard some things about the Big 10 potentially targeting some academic programs, Cal, Stanford, or perhaps Boston College to try to complete that DC to Boston to New York deal. So there's lots of rumors out there, but and my quarterback list, I'm working on tight ends now, top 50 tight ends. Wow. That's going to take me a long, long time. Just diving into it.
I know who one is on tight end list. I know who number one is.
Well, 1 and 2 are an interesting debate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So who's one?
One is the Georgia guy.
Gotta be, right? Brock Bowers. But Michael Mayer at Notre Dame is a close.
He's very good. Yes, he's really good. You're right.
And then there's a drop.
Okay.
Because then
tight end, I would expect that a little bit because they're different types of tight ends.
Yeah, but digging into tight ends is hard. I mean, you got Eric Gilbert. What do you do with him? I mean, he's a freak athlete. Went to LSU, had a great freshman season, transferred to Georgia, didn't play last year, has been injured, had some off-field issues. Going to play this season. He's may play wide receiver, but I still got him as a tight end. And he's a freak athlete, former 5-star. But, I can't put him near the top 2, but I can have him 4th. So the tight ends I'm digging into. So even the wide receivers we could do next week if we want to. And we could just talk about the Elite 11 and then get out of here because I know you got a hard out. The Elite 11 to me, so I'll be completely honest with you about the Elite 11. The Elite 11 used to be great, right? It was great, way back in the day. A lot of throws, and it was Bob Johnson, and the Nike guys, and Stump's still there, but it was Biggins and all those guys, and the Elite 11 was awesome, and they made a ton of throws. Then it sort of turned into less of a throwing event, more of a chalk talk event when Trent Dilfer took it over. It's better now. The last couple of years watching the film of the throws, because you get to see a lot of things that these kids can do. And remember, it was also tied in with the opening for many years. So it was part of 7-on-7 was the evaluation as well as the throws. So I like that because they did get more throws. But breaking down the film of this Elite 11, you have no Arch Manning, right? You have no Nico Malavea from Tennessee because he decided to play volleyball. There's some big names missing, but to me, Dante Moore from Michigan was the MVP. He didn't win it, but I had him number 1, Malachi Nelson number 2, who's going to USC. Then a small drop off to Jackson Arnold, who has a crazy arm, headed to Oklahoma, and then Chris Vizina, headed to Clemson at number 4, and then Austin Novosad, who's headed to Baylor at number 5, and then another drop down there to J.J. Cole, Pierce Clarkson, of course, Steve Clarkson's son.
Steve Clarkson's son?
It is, yeah. He's going to Louisville, and he's a really good intermediate passer. He struggles a little bit on the downfield throws, sometimes ball hangs and stuff, but really good intermediate passer, very accurate, and he's a hell of a recruiter for Louisville. I mean, he's a big part of why that class is doing very well and blowing up, and they made it a big splash. I mean, when Pierce committed to Louisville, his dad put up billboards in Louisville, saying we're coming. And Steve is so well respected that I think quarterback recruiting at Louisville is going to be just fine as long as Satterfield gets through this season. But they're going to recruit a lot of other talent around him. So that's a great get for them, and then another drop off after Clarkson. So, but Dante Moore to me, and he's Oregon and Michigan. And I hear different things, confidence is high at Oregon. Michigan is where he's from, and there's a lot of pressure on Harbaugh to get him because the CJ Carr kid went to Notre Dame, but I think they pushed CJ Carr to Notre Dame because they really want Dante Moore. He doesn't talk recruiting, so it's all guesswork. Malachi Nelson's going to USC, perfect fit for Lincoln Riley. Jackson Arnold's going to Oklahoma. Jeff Levy, that's a great fit for him. Dezina going to Clemson. He'll be one of the next great ones there. And then Novosad is Baylor, but Ohio State's coming at him hard. I like these kids, and they're very refined in many different ways, but the accuracy overall at the top I thought was excellent in this event. There weren't a lot of scatter shot, kids with inconsistency. There were kids that started slow and then picked up, after day one. But most of these guys are very smooth. And this is the future of college football. Dante Moore at Oregon or Michigan. He's going to be a guy that's going to push a team or try to push a team to the playoff. Malachi Nelson at USC, that's going to be the guy Lincoln Riley really wins with, because Caleb Williams has 2 years, but there's still a lot of rebuilding to be done there. Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma, if Levy stays, because he's going to be a head coach candidate pretty soon. And then Vizina at Clemson. I mean, you're talking about teams that are going to push for the playoff. And it was a very interesting group to break down on film. I wasn't there in person. My days of going to Redondo Beach, I love Redondo Beach. It's beautiful. To watch kids throw 12 times a day are over. I remember flying 7 hours out there for a Trent Dilfer Elite 11. And one day, this was Jared Goff. This was back then. One day, the kids threw 8 passes each. And I'm like, what am I doing here?
Wow. This Dante Moore here. Just a little clip.
Look at you bringing video into this.
Yeah, a clip or two, just so people have an idea of who you're talking about.
Very fluid, very, long ball's gorgeous, knows how to take, velocity off passes intermediately, confidence. And Malachi Nelson's just smooth. That's the one word you use with Malachi Nelson to describe him. So there's a lot of 5-star quarterbacks in this class. I mean, a lot. And the one guy that kind of not Jaden Rashada, remember the kid about the NIL last week? Long ball's good. Other stuff.
And where did you have him rated? Where was he?
He didn't make the Elite 11 finals.
He didn't make the Elite 11 finals.
So this rating right here is just
I see. Yeah, he didn't make the Elite 11.
It's the 12 guys that made the finals.
It's the 12 guys that made finals.
Yeah. So he didn't make the finals, which is kind of weird. And there's some really raw kids like Chris Parson right there at Florida State, really raw, made it. So Rashada, to me, was a big disappointment. And I had him in that potential 5-star range. And I usually don't like to make big sweeping changes based on the Elite 11. But I don't think he's a 5-star.
Now, they don't do any more 7-on-7 at Elite 11. So did that take away an element from it, or what did you think? What do you think about that?
It's not live 7-on-7. They do a whole lot of situational stuff, right? So they have a pro day, and they also have. So here's an example. Yeah. So they set you up situationally. They have red zone. They have pro day. You make all the throws, but it's not the competitive 7-on-7 that was with the opening. So that changes it a little bit with your evaluation. And it's routes on air. I mean, there is coverage sometimes, but that's why I don't put too much stock into it, simply because the Elite 11 over the years has been a great showcase. I'm echoing. for our.
You're echoing?
Yeah, why am I echoing? No, I'm not. I don't know. Great showcase for what you can do physically, but not really how you handle coverage and reading the field and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. The Elite 11 evolved in many different ways. A lot of it had to do with the different events surrounding it too, right? But now it's become a standalone thing because the other Nike events have kind of gone away. Nike's moved away from everything other than Elite 11, probably because the investment in the quarterbacks is probably the most important thing for them, in having that relationship. I'm talking down the line, right? So, I mean, who do you can Nike sign any wide receiver they want if they needed to down the line? Yes, but the quarterbacks are probably the toughest. So, my always question is, who are the guys catching the balls at these things, and does that affect at all, some of the evaluation, right? Because you're not. I don't think you have, all your 4 and 5 star wide receivers at this, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, with the opening they did, but a pass is a pass to me.
Right, got it.
If it's on the money and a kid drops it, I don't care.
Right.
To me, that's still a good pass. So I don't think that'll affect things much. And I love the Elite 11. I really do. I mean, there's so much tradition with it. And there are kids over the years that have been just superstars that we tried to get to camps and to 5-star challenge, and we just couldn't do it, that will go to the Elite 11 just because they want to be an Elite 11 quarterback and the historic nature of it all. So this year for Arch and Nico to sort of pass on it. Now, Arch isn't doing anything. Arch isn't doing camps, Peyton Manning passing camp, of course, but he's not doing camps. He's probably not going to do all-star games. He's just not. But for Nico to pass it up for volleyball, I like that because it's team. His team needs him. But it's really rare to have two of the best and biggest name quarterbacks not there.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And they are 1 and 2 by most people's account, right? So,
yeah, I don't have Nico as high, but most people do. I've got Dante Moore now behind Malachi Nelson, and I've got Arch third. The more I dig into Arch, the more I start to think it's the name. Not that he's not good, but his freshman season was amazing. His sophomore season, his junior seasons were okay. He's not regressing, but he's not progressing. So I worry about that, and it's low-level competition too. I remember the Jimmy Clausens of the world play. And the numbers they would put up were just outstanding because it wasn't great competition. And those Christians better competition than this. The game would be over early. Arch's team is kind of small, and he plays small teams, so it's difficult to really, really project how great he's going to be. We're going based on the last name.
There's no doubt about it. Really.
You're out. Is it 12?
What's that? Yeah, I hard stop in 5 minutes.
Are you selling at 12?
Am I selling at 12?
Yeah. Are you selling the product, the promo?
No, I have another my other end of the world podcast, my Success for Life.
You do a lot of those. You do a lot of the entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Now, who do you do those with?
So that podcast has been around. I started it on a whim in 2016. Just kind of interviewing people in originally football who were successful, like coaches or trainer, it's kind of that area, people I did business with in that space. And all of a sudden it took off. It just took off. We're 140 episodes in.
Wow.
And yeah. So what happened is now I turned down a ton of people. It's just never ending. You could only imagine how in business people are trying to continue to, they have different, there's so many different types of businesses. So I bring on people from all different spaces, sports sometimes, but a lot of times entrepreneurs. And I'll tell you the truth, it's helped me as an entrepreneur because I've had people from, I don't know, tech space to entrepreneurs to like health and wellness, and they all have like different things they did to succeed. And me simply asking a lot of these questions.
Yeah, you learn.
I've learned a lot of things in technique wise, like when to abandon something that isn't working anymore. Like those are hard things. I mean, you're starting out yourself. Those are hard things, like things you love, but then you have to say, I got to say goodbye to this thing I love. That's hard.
It's not making me money, and it's a time suck, and it's not. Yeah, you got to be efficient.
Yeah, so it's all these things over and over again that come up, and there's a bunch of themes. And but it's great because it gives you like, oh, this is how someone did it this might relate to my business, but the truth is, if it relates to my business, it ends up relating to a lot of other people's businesses too,
right,
which is why it's become popular. So
nice.
That's the long and short of it.
Let's get you out of here. So it's myfootballcamps.com/D1, Farrell promo on Twitter, Coach Schuman on Twitter, Farrell Sports on Twitter. DM us if you're looking for exposure. It's not free, but it is worth it. And we'll keep doing these podcasts, and maybe next week we'll talk conference realignment. We went niche-y. We went Garvin, Sims, New Jersey battles, kind of niche-y. So it's going to be interesting to see if anybody cares about that stuff, and if I get a phone call from Johnny Ray, or if I get a LinkedIn connection from Michael Ray.
It's worth to connect, and it definitely is. Well, let's just till next time. I think the beginning, what we talked about, really, for the people that are looking for that exposure, that was gold. Even diving into what we dove into, it was so in depth to understand how the evolution of that process is, and why me and Mike have really become in this industry the gurus. There's no one that had to anoint us. We earned and developed it. Guys now have companies that are saying, hey, this is the guy that's going to be in charge of this now. That's where their following comes from, not because they actually did anything, a lot of them yet. So it's kind of like
it's earned. It's endless, 365. You never, I mean, even if we go on vacation, which I don't anymore, but I used to, I'm working. Like if I'm out for a round of golf, yesterday I went for a round of golf. I'm on my phone in between holes, texting people back, and there's no stopping ever. You cannot take a day off ever.
That's what I love about it. That's the addictive part about it, that there's always more potential that you could do, and there's more people you can reach, and no matter how good you're doing, there's more you can do. Doesn't matter. And
that's the lesson, not only to the kids that we're promoting, but also to some of the interns that I'm bringing on, because they don't understand. After 2 weeks, they're like, Mr. Farrell, this is too hard. I'm like, well, good luck. Life's hard. If you're moving on, great, no problem, no harm, no foul. But if you don't have that drive, you're not going to be successful. So good luck with your podcast. And then, I'll talk to you about some of the affiliate stuff off.
Absolutely. We'll sign off here.
Yeah.
This was a great podcast. At least for me, it was really interesting. All the things we touched on. Until next
time, people giving me crap.
I think it's great.
Endless stories of that. Endless. It's unbelievable.
That's a podcast in itself. Guys giving Mike crap.
That's a podcast series. That's 150 episodes minimum. Minimum.
Until next week. All right.